Welcome to Cloud OnAir, live webinars from Google Cloud. We are hosting webinars daily. My name is Gabriela, and today we will be talking about migrating on-premise databases from MySQL to Cloud SQL with low downtime. You can ask questions anytime on the platform, and we have Googlers on standby to answer them. Let's get started. So I'm Gabriela, as I said. I prefer to be called Gabby. I'm a developer advocate for Google Cloud, and you can reach me at Twitter as Gabby Davila. My DMs are open, don't need to follow me. But if you have any questions that you're shy to ask, just reach me out there later. So what we're gonna be building today? We are gonna be migrating from a self-managed database that could be anywhere that you manage. In this case, we are gonna have a compute engine VM running MySQL 5.7, and you're gonna migrate to another Cloud SQL instance, and this is gonna be managed. At the same time, the application is gonna be talking first to the compute engine VM running the managed database, self-managed database, and then you're gonna have a failover to the new database on the Google Cloud SQL instance. So you can understand a bit of the databases that we offer here at Google. We have mostly 4 types of databases. We have in-memory databases like Cloud Memory Store for you to use for sessions, caching, that kind of stuff. We have Cloud File Store. It's a type of document store in serverless. You have Cloud Bigtable if you want low latency, scalable, and wide column store. Cloud SQL, which it is the one we're going to be talking today. Cloud Spanner if you want multi-regional and scalable relational database for mission-critical applications. And if you're using data warehousing, you have BigQuery. We have partners too, like Mongo, Oracle, Redis, and Elastic. So you can talk to our partners to be able to deploy those applications inside Google Cloud Platform. So what is Google Cloud SQL? Google Cloud SQL, it's a fully managed service that you don't have to worry about your infrastructure to maintain because it's kept through Google's SRE, so you don't have to carry, let's say, a page anymore. Nobody carries a pager, but like if you do, that's not your worry anymore. And we offer in the flavors of MySQL and Postgres. Both of them have high availability on the same region, but different zones. However, not in different regions for now. What it takes to run a database? To build a database, you have several steps to take care of and stacks to take care of. You need to have server maintenance, make sure you have power redundancy on your data center. Then you need to deal with operating system upgrades and installations for patching, like for instance when we have the Intel meltdown and other vulnerabilities that we discover here. Then you need to worry about database backups, and they cannot be on the same place that you have your data center, for instance. Software patches and scaling. All of that with a good monitoring system. It's a real challenge to keep that running, and that's why we have Cloud SQL to offer for you. You don't have to have those stacks to worry anymore. So typically when we talk about migration from on-premise to the cloud, we have 2 options. The first one, it's a simple approach, and the last one requires a bit more of implementation. But the simple approach is you have an existing instance and you store your downtime because you're gonna have a dump in a SQL file or CSV. You have to store that on Google Cloud Storage and then import that to a new instance, pointing the application to the new instance, and your downtime stop. For that approach, we have 3 recommended steps. You should optimize your schema for import. That means data without secondary keys, and put your data in order for primary key if you're using auto increment. And also optimize your instance for the import. Of course, if you have more than some gigabytes, some terabytes of data, you cannot have an instance that's larger than your data set. But it's usually recommended for you, if you have, for instance, a 500 data set, to have 500 megabyte data set, to have an instance with at least 1 gigabyte of memory. Here, Cloud SQL, the smaller instance has 3.75 gigabytes. Use SSD storage because it's faster. And the higher storage that you have combined with the CPU, it's the higher amount of IOPS that's going to be delivered to you. Don't forget to turn off binary logging. That way you don't have to write the information twice during the import. You can activate that later. You don't have to do that during the import. And last, you need to monitor your operation. See how the paging operations it's happening on your database, and that will depend on increase of your import time. After the import, you can change the instance type, because we offer the possibility for you to have a bigger instance in the beginning, and then you can scale down to your needs or scale up to your needs again. Turn on the binary logging so you can have replication and point-in-time recovery, and add indexes as needed after you do the import. Another type of migration is when you have an existing instance connected to the application, and this one you have to run MySQL dump to get the SQL file. Because of the GTID purged flag that you're gonna have to add to the file, we need to have that MySQL dump run. Doesn't matter how old it is, just that it has that information. Then you're gonna import that to a new instance with the replication enabled. Once you enable the replication, the replication will catch up, applying the new information since the dump that was generated to the new instance. And then you're gonna close that connection between primary and replica and put the application to run on the new instance. You're gonna have a bit of downtime there. It's gonna depend on how fast the failover happened, but it's faster. It's a low downtime compared to the simpler approach. Must-haves for that. You need to have, as I said, a MySQL dump containing GTID purged, and upload that to GCS, Google Cloud Storage. You have on your primary the following configuration. Server ID is set to a value, for instance, could be 1. Log bin is enabled, so you have binary logging enabled. GTID mode is on. GTID stands for Global Transaction ID. It's a form of replication. And enforce GTID consistency is also on. Those are all the must-haves that you have to migrate to Cloud SQL. Let's see in action. The demo architecture that we have right now is the following. We have an instance running WordPress with Apache and MySQL on Compute Engine. You can access from mobile or your desktop. What we want to have is the following. We want to change the Apache to MySQL to only run MySQL on Cloud SQL. The MySQL on the Compute Engine is going to be disabled, and then you're going to have your database running on Cloud SQL. That way you can scale your database without having to scale your application server, dividing the responsibilities. So you can access live the application that I made. It's on sessions.gabriela.io, and you're going to see the following. It is an application with all the Google Cloud Next sessions. So if you click through, you're going to see sessions there's going to be on the Google Cloud Next website. And here there is the link to the session if you want to. And right now, this application is running on the same server as the database. It's a Compute Engine virtual machine, and this spike here is because I was sending 100 requests per second to the database. Notice that at the same time, the disk IO operation also went up because it was reading from the database. So let's do a test. I want to count how many posts I have. See, here I have the MySQL console, and I'm going to count how many posts I have. Right now I have 492. Once we set up the replication, I should have the same amount of posts on the replica and on the master. For that, you're going to go to the SQL panel here on Google Cloud Console and select Migrate Data. Your screen may be different if you don't have any SQL instances created, but the button for migration of data should be there present. Once you hit that, it's going to show you a bit of information that you need to have. Your data source, Cloud SQL Read Replica, and you need to have also a replication user. The name that you're going to put here first is the name of the primary, so you know that it is the primary instance. So here I'm going to put as primary next sessions 2019. What is the public address? It's the address of the virtual machine that I have running both WordPress and MySQL. Right now, I have this IP address. The port number for MySQL, the default is 3306, but if you're running a different configuration, you should set up in here. The username that I created on my primary is replication. And the password here, you're gonna use the password that you set up on the database. It's important to know which version of MySQL you're running because we have two options, migration from MySQL 5.7 and migration to MySQL 5.6. You can check that by running select at version, and you're gonna see which version you have. In this case, I have MySQL 5.7.25. The minority release, like the 25, it's not important. It's important to know that's 5.7. You can enable the replication using an SSL or TLS certificate if you have it. And these are the options to upload it. But in this case, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna just set up with the username and password. Next, you're gonna set up a name for the replica. In this case, I don't want to put the name as replica because once I promote, it's not going to be a replica anymore. So I'm going to put it next sessions on Cloud SQL. So I know that's it. Latency is very important. So when you upload, when you prepare your machine, make sure if it is on GCP, you know which region is going to be. But if it's not, we recommend for you to get a machine that's closest to the region of your application. In this case, it's on US Central C. So for that, I'm going to add US Central C as my zone because the latency is going to be slower. Then I'm going to choose the size of the database. You have all the following options if you want a standard machine or one with high memory. My data set is really small, so I'm going to keep with 3.75 gigabytes. And the thing is, if you change the CPU here, you're going to see the network throughput increases. And also the IOPS is going to increase. I'm going to go change back to the standard one. See, the network throughput is only of 250 out of 2000. Storage capacity, we can choose between SSD and a normal hard drive. We recommend SSD because of the latency. And this option here already comes enabled for you if you want to have automatic storage increases. What does it mean? It means, let's say, if you set up your database to have 10 gigabytes of disk and somehow your dump ended up with 20, it's not going to give you an error. It's going to just increase the size for you. I'm going to leave a 10. As I said, I have a small. And finally, the initial dump to see the database. I stored mine on Google Cloud. You need to store them on Google Cloud Storage, and it's going to have the GTID purged variable configured there. By default, you can connect to the Cloud SQL instance using the Cloud SQL proxy, or you can whitelist IP addresses. In this case, I'm going to whitelist the IP address for the application, which it is this one, which it is the same one from the server. Let me copy here. 104.198.190.31. We do not recommend for you to use the wild card with 0000 as IP address to allow everyone to connect to your database, because that's not secure. If you have any customization concerning database flags and labels, you can set up them here also. Once I hit create, it's going to show me information of the outgoing IP address. That's not the IP address of the instance. As I said, by default, MySQL, especially version 5.7 and 5.6, does not allow remote connections to it. So you're going to have to whitelist the IP address that's going to show you, so you'll be able to have replication. Hitting create, it's going to show here the information that I put it in, username, password, the location, and it's reserving right now the outgoing IP address for you to whitelist on your application side. Just a moment. Once you have this IP address here, you put on your server or firewall or on the variable of the MySQL configuration to allow this connection to happen. Once you click next, replication will start and setting up the instance. You can see here the instance is getting set up. And while this is going to take a while, because it depends on how big it is, the file that you have for your import, and how big of an instance did you put it in. I already prepared replica sessions here, so we can do the migration from here. I'm going to connect to it. And this IP address is 104.197.92.231. And I'm connected to the same database. And it should have the same amount of posts as it had on the other one. See, I have 942 here, and I also have 942 here. Let's play with it while it's creating the instance. Let's create a new post. When I create a new post, I should change from 492 to another number. WordPress is not necessarily sequential, so new post, adding content, and publish. And the post was published. We can see here on the website, new post, and let's see on the database, 494. As I said, it's not sequential because there's drafts and other concepts, and here 494. So both replication is happening. It's catch up. Now we have a dilemma. Do you stop the reads, the writes on the server, or do you want to stop the server? That's gonna depend on you. Because if you stop the writes on the server and then you resume it and promote your replica, you're gonna lose the data that's coming in. It's impossible to not have downtime. You will have downtime, and that's the choice you need to do. It's now. So let's see how it is the preparation of the instance. It's still creating, but that's not a problem. Now I'm gonna exit here. That's my server running WordPress, and I'm gonna change the IP address of the connection string. Right now it's connecting to localhost because it is the same server, it's on the same database. And before changing it, I'm gonna stop the server. So if you are accessing the website right now, you're gonna have downtime. We can check that using an application called Hey, which I'm gonna put in here to run for 30 seconds. So while Hey is running, I'm gonna stop the MySQL service, and I'm gonna add the new database here. The new database was added, and Hey is running. It's gonna tell us how many connections were successful or not. We can try to access that application and see we have downtime right now because it's trying to connect to the database, and the database, it's offline. And the server stopped and replication is here. For right now, our server is read-only. So if we select from the table posts the last one, let me just make sure of the name of the table. Post name. So that's the revision for the post name. That's the last one, 496. And the ID, not the amount. And let's try to update it. Test where ID equals 496. I should get an error. Yes, because I'm reading as read-only. So let's see here. Comment to request canceled. So we had successful 253 responses and over 4,000 with errors. Now let's promote replica. Let me put it back. Once I click on promote here, it's gonna restore the server and it's gonna be able to do the writes. The other one that we set up is just ready too. If you wanna use that one, you need to use this IP address here. It's this, that's the outgoing IP address. It's the one you whitelist, as I said before, and the public IP address is the one that you set up on the application. So our database was just promoted, as you can see here. And if I try to do the update again, it lost connection because it restarted, and it did affect the record, and post name is name test. Let's see if our applications is working. I hope I have the same user and data. Let me see. Oh, typo. Let me fix. To, in the end, is 2. .2.3.1. and that it is. That was my mistake. I put the wrong IP address, so the downtime took a bit longer than it should. Again, this is the low downtime approach, and you saw that the replica was ready nearly instantly. Just to recap, on your master, you need to make sure that select the TID mode oh, sorry. Is on, that enforcing TID consistency is also on, that you have log bin set up, and it's one is true. And if you want to know more details, you can always see show status, and it's going to bring all the variables configured on your database. Right now, if you look here, before was a replica before, but it was waiting for the master to send event. If we do reconnect to the server, it's gonna show that's no longer a replica, but it is a master. And let's count how many posts we have in here. $494. And here, let me connect to the database again. $494. Let's add a new post. New post on Cloud SQL. Hosted at GCP. Publish. And the number should not be equal anymore. Here I have 496. And here I still have 494 because we did break the replication and it's not going on anymore. So, access the application, play around. You see that right now it's on Cloud SQL. And so technically speaking, the application should be able to handle more data requests than it was before, and you can scale your database independently of your application server. So after the migration, that's what we have. We still have MySQL installed on Cloud on Compute Engine, but it's only running Apache for now, and MySQL is being connected to the application on Compute Engine on Cloud SQL. Use a simple approach whenever it's possible. Use external application to reduce migration downtime for production applications. And you can see on the Google cloud.google.com/free trial, how do you get started with Cloud SQL? Remember, if you have a Gmail account, you may be eligible for some credits depending where you live. Please stay tuned for live Q&A. We will be back in less than a minute. Hi, welcome back. I have some questions here and I'm going to be reading through them and I'm going to reply if I know them. I'm currently using MySQL on different cloud. Can I still use external master feature to replicate my SQL environment? The answer is depends. As I said before, there are a few requirements for you to have it. You need to have GTID enabled and enforce GTID consistency enabled and be able to create a replication user. If you don't have access to those configurations, you won't be able to do the replication to Cloud SQL. The other way around would be to do a simple migration, as I said before, with longer downtime where you have a dump of your database and then you bring up that dump into a new instance on MySQL. Next question is, my GTID is not turned on. What is the recommended step to use external master? So if your GTID is not turned on, you need to first have binary logging enabled and then go to the MySQL conf file and enable GTID. You can enable GTID per session if you have super user, but you don't want per session. You want to be globally on the server. Once you set up the GTID mode as on and enforce GTID consistency mode as on, you can do the external master. If you don't have that, you won't be able to set up that on Google Cloud. Third question. When we create Cloud SQL, we don't have an outgoing IP address. We just have one IP address for the instance. But if we create using Migrate option, we have two IP addresses even after promoting. The thing is, when you create first a Cloud SQL instance without the migration option, you don't need an outgoing IP address because that's going to be the database IP address that's going to be serving to the outside world to connect to it. If you don't want to use the IP address to connect, I recommend using the Cloud SQL proxy and use the instance name to connect to the Google Cloud platform. You see two IP addresses on migration because the network is attached to the server on Cloud SQL after the instance is created. So you don't have to wait for that IP address to show. We show you an alternative IP address just to connect to the database. If it is still persistent after the promotion, it's something that I didn't see yet, but I can look up. And if you wrote that question there, I'll post it later why that's happening. Is it mandatory to have a public IP for the source instance? Yes, but you can use a firewall to protect your server and then only allow the outgoing IP address to connect to your database. If you're not able to do that, I only have to wildcard everything to be able to connect. You can still do the offline approach where you have a dump and import everything. But yes, a public IP, it's necessary for you to connect. And another question is, if I change the hardware type later, will it need a downtime? Yes, because we are moving onto a different type of instance, a small downtime may happen, but it usually doesn't take too long. It's also worthy to say if you're not able to fail over to the external master automatically, you can have failover if you add the high availability option after the promotion process. Thank you for tuning in. Please visit Cloud OnAir to discover more content from Google Cloud experts.